everybody. Let me adjust some lighting here so we don't have so much glare. Let's see, how's that? A little bit better? If the lighting's good and your sound is good, let me know so we can get started. Maybe I'll move the camera up just a little so we can be a little closer. There we go. All right. Wow. Numbers are popping up. I can't hear anybody though. Can you guys hear me? Let me see if I can see any notes on there. Hi, Maud. How are you doing this morning? Yeah, I adjusted that a little bit, so hopefully that'll be better. The fabric will be on top of it, so that shouldn't be too much of an issue. So, honey is probably going to check on me later. He is making dinner, so hallelujah, and getting that all set up. So let me grab some documentation to show you what we're going to do. So I think maybe a lot of you have seen our back-to-back template items. So one of the ones that I use a lot is the 3-2, and that particular one is in the Fun and Fancy collection, and I love it. It's a good size, you know, in terms of the length of it and the depth. But in about the last month, I've probably had about 8 or 10 different people send me a text message and say, I'm really interested in the back-to-back. What size should I get? So I thought it might be a good opportunity to explore that a little bit more, to try to answer some questions and also give you some more fun designs that this template can do, because it's really amazing. And there are some really interesting ways that we can use it that I don't think we've ever explored on video yet. So at least one of them I know I haven't seen before. So I'm going to go ahead and share that. So I'll say hi to a couple people. Hi, Anne. Hi, Marilyn. Hi, Linda. So bear with me today because honey is in the other room. If I absolutely need him, I'm going to call him, and he said he would come help me. So this one, I just want to show you some information when you're shopping. Yeah, so Mary Mike Bennett, I get to talk to you a lot because you have a lot of good questions. So I am going to show you the packaging first and explain what does certain information tell you about the template when you're purchasing it, or if you're thinking about buying something, what do you need to know as far as the name? Okay, so right here, this is back to back. And what you're going to see when you're shopping on the website, we'll go down to here, back to back. If it says S after B2B, that means it's a set. So there's going to be more than one item. That's why the price may seem different than you expect. If you just want to purchase one item, it should say back to back and then a number. Okay, so right here, back to back, S for set, number 4. And then, of course, it'll have long arm, low shank, high shank, whatever you bought. This is long arm. Okay, so what does this mean when it says 4 inches? What is that telling you? That is a specific bit of information. I'm going to pull one of my 4-inch ones because I do have the set, and we'll put it up on the screen. Okay, so here it is. Oh, I guess we'll have to put it down because it's kind of big. Okay. What it means when it says that it's 4 inches, a back-to-back curve is a set of curves. One curves one way, and then the other one curves the other way. So essentially, it's an S curve is what you are getting. And what the 4 tells you is that the base size of the curve from one side to the other, right here, is 4 inches. So this template at a minimum has to be 8 inches from one side to the other because this is a 4-inch curve and this is a 4-inch curve. And then a little bit more, obviously, for these little parts on the end. You know, this is about a 1/2 inch plus and this is about a 1/2 inch. This actual template is about 10 inches this way. So it's pretty long. It's not horrible or anything like that. I mean, like I can hold on to it. Sometimes I use 2 hands with these bigger ones. So this is the 4-inch, and that's this base. Let me show you the other one in the set so we can talk about what is different between the 2 different ones. Okay, obviously I have no grips on this one, but that's okay. These are 4 different back-to-back curves. And what is different is this depth from here to the middle. So this curve is still 4 inches wide, but it's shallower right here. And then on this one, you can see this one is a little bit deeper on this side. So this is kind of shallow, and this one is deeper. Well, then if we look at this one, by comparison over here on this side, I'll turn it this way. You can see this is super shallow right here. This is very gentle. Whereas this particular one is super deep. And in fact, how deep is it? It's going to end up being 4 inches deep because it's 2 inches here and 2 inches there. This, in fact, is a half of a circle, right? This is a clamshell. So sometimes when we have the back-to-back, by looking at the numbers, we can tell if it's going to be a circle or not. And let me show you how you can tell. Anytime, here, let me flip it over, sorry. Anytime we have a back-to-back where the base of the curve is the same size as the height number, so this is 1 inch deep, 1 inch high, like this, and this one is 4, you can see the number right there. Anytime that the width and the height are the same, that is a circle on the back-to-back. So here's another example of that. This one is a really small one. This is the 1 inch, and it has a shallow curve on this side, and it has a circular curve on this side. So this is the 1 inch, and notice that the depth of the curve is also 1. And what they're measuring is how far from the middle, not from the middle, from the top up here to the bottom. So it's double. So it's half of the distance here and half of the distance here. And maybe that's a little complicated, but we're going to sew some of those. So we're going to really show you and try to measure those out so you could see the difference in those, okay? So let me just explain then one more time. This one it's a 1 inch back-to-back. So the base from here to here is 1 inch. And then this little circle on that side, from this side to this side is 1 inch. And then from there to there is 1 inch. And then from this half curve here is 1 inch, okay? And that's going to be always the same on each side. What will change between the 2 sides is the depth, right? You're going to get a shallow and a deeper one with each one of them. So this is the 1 inch. And today we're going to use a couple different ones just so you can get some scaling, some ideas. But this is the 2. And you can see there's just 1 of each. So this is 4 inches. So this is a little bit more than 4. And that's what changes when you're looking at those, in terms of hand size. So when I get this 4 inch one, that is my hand. Look at how much it hangs off, right? And then this one, if I just put this 2 inch, I can cover that with my whole hand. So if you feel like a really long ruler is not for you, then you automatically know that this 4 inch maybe is going to be a little bit long. Now, I don't choose that. I mean, I think you could just hold a little bit of it and then adjust your hand position. But, some people, maybe that is just not what they want to do. So right away, I know that this one is going to be really big and the little 1 inch or the 2 inch is going to be a lot shorter. Okay, so let's start with just one of them and we'll just do the basic design. I want to keep them in order because I want to show you some stuff later. All right. So we're going to start with this 4 inch one, and that way you'll see how I manipulate it with my hands. It is longer. The other ones are easier because they're shorter. So here we go. I have a lot of different markings on here. We may not use them all, but that'll help you to see it. Okay, so orienting right off the bat, this is 4 inches wide, this is 2 inches wide. So if I use the one with the circle, it would be a 4-inch circle. It would be 2 inches on this side and 2 inches on this side if I did them lined up. We're going to use this little bit shallower one. So I'll just show you. This is 2 inches deep, which means that from the middle, it'll be 1 inch on this side and 1 inch on this side. Okay? All right, so let's just start and I'll show you. I've marked the center. And what that will allow me to do is align one of these straight lines so that I can move across and get everybody lined up. I don't know if we'll be able to see everything. Let's see if I can move out just a little so we can show some of that alignment. Oh, so I just saw a question and it kind of is relevant, so I'm gonna see if I can find it one more time. What you're showing, yes, okay, good question. Margie asked, can what I'm showing be adapted to other sizes? 100%, absolutely. The basic concepts that I'm telling you are going to vary in size between each template, but the information that I'm giving you and many of the designs you'll be able to do at any size. So the scale will be different, but the basics of the design and the alignment should be about the same. Okay, so let's get started here on the bottom and we'll just put this right there and get us started. Where is my bobbin? I know, that's a lot of talking. I try to sew more than I talk, but sometimes we need to talk about things. So hopefully that's okay with you guys. Okay, bobbin is all set. And I'm going to anchor my needle before we start because that way I can just set this right on there. Now, let's show you the center alignment. Okay, and let me make sure that I'm scrolling. Oh, you guys are having fun. Lots of people are visiting. This line right here, the foot is going to sink into that line and the needle will be aligned on this first reference line. So whenever you're sewing, I don't care about these other lines right now. That could be used to move the lines up, but always the needle is going to be on this line because the foot is going to sink down a 1/4 inch so that the foot is in this space. This is the needle reference line, the very first line, always. Over here too, this is the needle reference. So even though these can be used for stacking curves up on top of each other, where you're going to look for your needle alignment is always right there, first line. Okay, so that means right here I'm going to line it up on that first line. Now, this is really a big template. I can't control the whole thing and I'm not going to try. I'm going to hold right here where my foot is going to be sewing. Then when I get to the other side, then I'll just move over. So right here is a good place to transition. I know that my needle is in the line. I also have that center mark. So I'll just hold this for a second and I'll scoot my hand down. If I need to manipulate my sandwich at all, I can do that. If I need to check my alignment here, right at the tip, that's where my pressure is, right in here. I'm not holding back here because this can pop up. I always want the pressure close to the foot. So then I can use both hands and sew all the way. Now, one thing I love about these templates is it's really easy to move down just by getting your foot into the hook and lining everything up. Sometimes, like right here, I don't have very much alignment right here because I'm right on the edge of the boundary. I'll show you. We'll tip it just a little bit more. So there's not that much here for me to see right here to align. One of the things you can always do is look back behind and you have a little bit of alignment at the back. Plus, for this one, I kind of want this aligned because I drew these lines. Maybe I'm a little bit wonky, but it'll all work out. Right? It's just like that when we quilt, right? All of our lines are sometimes wonky. Okay, so let me just show you what we just did so you can see. There is your back to back. So we actually did 3 curves. So this would be 4 inches, 4 inches, 4 inches. And in fact, the spacing of this whole opening is 12 inches long. So that's exactly what we wanted to see. Once I put this back on and I sew this, I want to just explain that we use the wider side to do this. You can tell if you mess up, I mean, if you have creative fun with this design. If I sew on the other side, then these are not going to look even. So you can always check that. If you feel like you need to check it, just stick it back on there and make sure that you've got this 1/4 inch right there. That's how you'll know that, okay, yeah, that's the side that I used and this is the other side. One of the other things that I like to do, if I can find them, is put my ruler sticker on there. And of course, I can't find them right now, so I won't bother. But, putting a mark that says, this is the green side, and I'm going to use the green side for this design. And then put the blue arrow on this side. Okay, that's the blue side that I'm using. That's an important way to remind yourself which side are you working with so that you can just have some kind of reference, and then you won't mess up like I've done many, many times. So here, we'll put blue on that side. And this way you guys will know if I'm messing up too, and then you can tell me. Say, no, don't use that side. Okay, so we'll put the pink on that side. So right now, when I line this up, I want to make a matching curve. So this is the same curve. If I want to go the other way, it's more practical for me to flip this over. And what that allows, I can use the curve the opposite way, but I can use the same alignments. So I might want to go ahead and put that same colored arrow on this side again, just to make sure that I'm keeping track of what I'm doing. So the pink will go on this side, because I just looked and made sure, and we'll put the blue on the other side. That way you can keep track of me, make sure I'm not messing up. So right here, sometimes when we're sewing this, it's going to draw in a little bit. This is part of a 360, it's half. So maybe this line down here might need to be smushed or pulled a little bit to get lined up. We want to cross right on the intersection where the curved center is. So I'm going to put my spacing gauge right there. This line right here is the middle where the curve is going to change. And I call that the curve transition line. Here we're going down. When we hit this midline, we're going to be going the opposite direction. So right here, if I put my spacing gauge right there, and I can just line it up right on the line, right there, making this edge flush, then I should hit right in the middle of that curve. And remember what we did before? That was where we transitioned our hand as well. So now I can double check all of this alignment, and we should be right in the middle right there. So we have a pretty good center line right there that's pretty easy for us to see. So that one's not hard for us to judge if we're going to hit it correctly or not. Right into the hook, and then pull this down, and we'll get lined up. And right here, because of our little smushing, we're actually right on the line, which is great. And I also want to get right to where I left off, so I'll go ahead and do that. So right here, I'm just going to stop right where I left off. Now I want to show you some of the measurements that we were just talking about. Okay, let me grab my little ruler. I have this super cute ruler from Sew Steady. Ha! Isn't that cute? Is it upside down? There it is. So this came with my new ruler caddy, my drink caddy. So let me see if I can show you that real quick. It's on my other Sew Steady table, so I can't show it to you on this table. But look, it's so cool. This adheres to the underside and the bottom of your Sew Steady table. You get that cute little ruler, and I can put my choco liner in there, and I can put my cup, and I got that cool Sew Steady cup too with it. So this is the table, caddy, and ruler. So this is just a really quick, easy little reference guide. When I put this on here, we just said that this is 4. So from here to this intersection is 4, the base, and this is 2, right? So that is exactly what we're measuring. So from the center, it'll be half of that designation, but from the top of the curve to the bottom, it's 2. So just to show you, we use this, the pink side right there, and that's what this number means. It's how much from the top of the curve to the bottom. So if I'm using the other side, right, it's not as deep. So we're going to do that now just to show you the variations that you can have. And that's why it's really important that you have grips on both sides, because you may need to flip it over so that you can line everything up. So notice here, we are not touching, and notice here, we're just barely touching, because the foot's going to come on the inside of this curve and on the inside of this curve right here, right? So it's on the inner part here, and we're well inside on this side. So we'll get lined up, try to get our lines nice and straight, and here we go. Ideally, when we do this, if we do it well, right there, we should hit exactly where we need to. So if you're not, you can always check that with your spacing gauge and help to get realigned and make sure everybody's working. And same right here, making sure that this line is going to cross right through that little intersection right there. And that's one of the things that I love about this, because if you'll see real quick, we get this awesome ribbon. And because these curves are different depths, but they are the same base, that's how we can get this stack of curves. So for example, if I use that other 4, I can get a narrower curve, and I can get the full circle, taller curve here. And that's really fun. That gives you a lot of options to play with the design. So again, we wanted to do this bottom curve, so we should be able to just pull this down. We'll get lined up, a little smushing, and this should be a 1/4 inch right here, and then we'll start sewing. Now, of course, I can sew this one back the other way, and I can make the double helix, is what I like to call it, where you get these double stacks on both sides. But we have a lot of other designs that we're going to get to, so I'm just going to do one side. And this, I like this ribbon like that because I think it looks really cool. I like it on one side with the alternation. It's just really fun. All right. So Donna Dean, you should be able to type your question into the comments. So I'm not sure why it's not working for you, but you can always message me afterwards. You can send me an email, or you can message me on Facebook or whatever, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. So let me see real quick if we have some comments really fast. So, okay. Before you even start, how do you determine where and how far apart your, I can't see the rest of the question there, but one of the questions were, how do you assess the design? Like, how do you fit it in the space? Right away from the very beginning, before I ever sew anything, I know that this curve is 4. If I want the curve in the center of a border or a space or whatever, I'm going to mark the center, and I'm going to start in the center and put the curve centered however I want it. I can center it by the edge right here where I start the curve in the middle, or I can start it right here where this is centered right on the curve. So then I can work to one side and work to the other side, and everything will be even if I start in the middle. If I don't care, I can just start on the end. And that's true for almost any border. That's a great tip that you can use for virtually any border. If you want it centered visually, start in the middle and work out to one side, and then come back to the center and work it the other way. That's always how you can do borders. So hopefully that was a good answer for that question. I know that if I need different sizes, that can also influence what size I choose. For example, 4 inches fits easily into this 12-inch space. Well, if I had 7.5, maybe 1.5 would be a better fit because it would fit more evenly into that space. And then you can always echo outside of the border in order to make it wider if you want to do that. So let me just show you real quick. Like if we want to echo these right now, that's where some of these lines can be really helpful. So let me just scoot out. And actually I'm just going to pick up the needle. That way we won't have any odd stitching out here. If I want to echo, I'm not going to use the full curve. I'm just going to use part of it. So this is the deeper one. So we'll just make the wider echo. These lines that we had before, I can use those and I can line those up. And I'm actually going to flip it, and I'll show you why I'm going to flip it. Notice how down there I don't have the ability to go all the way to the center because the needle is actually going to start up here. So sometimes that means you may have to get a piece of the curve and then flip it around. So right here, see how the curve is open, whereas the hook would prevent me from seating further down, right? And right here, this line is lined up right on this intersection. So that's how I know that I'm in the middle right here. And I can move this up to any line that I want to, but notice how I wouldn't necessarily be able to come all the way in right here. So we'll start right here with our little echo right in the boundary. Make your foot touch. And remember that this was our center line, and I've moved up a whole 1/2 inch. So ideally, at this point, I should get that 1/2 inch spacing. So I'm going to stop when my needle's in the center, and hopefully this will give me that perfect spacing to do the next one right there too. If not, I can maybe just do 1 or 2 stitches to get myself into place. I need to be touching here. I'm centered right here, and this line right there should intersect right where the cross is, and I'm pretty good. I think I am touching, and here I go. So this is how I can echo these designs using the tools that I have and all these extra lines. But I can't do the full S curve because that's going to cross right in the middle. So if I'm using it for an echo, I'm only working one side at a time. So let's get aligned and get on our correct line. We're on this one line is the needle reference, and we've moved to this second one. So there's actually 2 spaces below where the needle was. And then here, we'll just sew. So I'll flip it around so you can see. So I can do different spacings right here. This is that 1/2 inch echo because we moved up 2 lines. And this way I could do another one. So you're going to use that intersection right there will be where the template will line up each time. But if you're echoing, you're only going to be able to get the single curve at a time. Then you'd have to move the ruler each time, okay, in order to do that echoing. All right, so let's see. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Which template did you use last? So Becky, the only one that we've sewed with right now is the template, the back-to-back number 4, and this is number 4-2. Okay, so number 4-1 is the one that has the 4-inch circle and a very shallow curve on the other side. This one doesn't have a circle, but it has a deep curve and a shallower curve. And so we've just used this one. So inside the very inner one or outer one, it wouldn't matter because this distance is the same. We could sew the deeper one first or the narrower one first, and this would be identical. And then this is just echoed using the lines that are on the ruler, these additional spacing lines. And we lined up the center and we lined up the intersection right there in order to make our arcs match up. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and attack this off real quick so we can move on to some other cool ideas. So I could do this exact design, exactly the same echo, the double helix or the single ribbon right here, with the other templates, the only difference is going to be the spacing is going to be different. Instead of it being multiples of 4, it'll be multiples of whatever that template is. If it's 3 inches, then I could do, I could still do 12, but I'd actually have one more of these little shapes in there because that is, enough to fit in a 12-inch space. You would get more of them. So the next thing I want to show you is kind of unique, and this is the one that I haven't seen anywhere. And the reason I showed you this one first is I really was trying to express the spacing here. So this was the 2, and this one is a 1/4 inch less on each side. So this is 1.5 if I did this shallow curve on both sides. But I want to show you what can happen if we use a completely different way of thinking about the template. Okay, so this one is the back-to-back 3-2. So right in the middle where this arrow is, this is the curve transition. So this is the center. This is 3, and this is 3. And then we've got 2 different depths. So this is the 3-2, and your depth is 2 inches here and 1.5. So it's similar to the one that we did, but not the same. And you can see that this looks a little pointier because it's taller, but it's narrower. So it has a little bit more of a pointy look than the 4 did for that same measure, because the 4 looks a lot more gentle. So see how this one looks a lot pointier. Okay? All right, so the way that we're going to do this time is a little bit different. Instead of centering the template like that, I'm going to put the top of the template. I call this the mountain, and then this is the valley. I'm going to put the mountain on the center. So to do that, I'll still put my needle right here in the center. I'm going to call this one, for your reference, center to center. And then for this one, we're going to say top to top, TTT. And this is just a way that you can use to kind of have a mnemonic to think about the design itself. So I'm lined up right here on the center line. Let me see if I can, this is what I want. Let's see. How come that is not going to end up at the center? I got to think about it for a second. Oh, it will. Okay, I'm just crazy. Don't worry, it's all going to work out. So even though this is not touching the center, this still has a ways to go before it comes back in. So right down here, I'm just going to keep this line squared up. And if I needed some more reference lines, I could always add some, but I think we'll be okay. So let's just sew. All right, now, see, we should be okay. Right there. So it looks like I overshot it just a little bit, but we'll work on that. I'll get it adjusted. Okay, and then here, we should have a 1/4 inch right there because we want to sew in so that the top matches up. Okay, and what we'll do is I'm going to just center it here and we'll just go back the other way so you can see it. See, even I get visually distorted sometimes. All right, so let's see if there's any questions. So we're using the mountain to align. And like I said, if I needed another line to reference that, I could even just put 1/4 inch spacings if I need to. And let's see where we are. You guys have a lot of comments, a lot of good ones. Thanks for people that are helping. So many times people are passing the information, passing the torch. Okay, so we have the deeper curve. We can check that right here. This is the deeper one. I can tell because it's a 1/4 inch, just as it's aligned. And this was where the center was right there. So we want to keep that nice and squared up. And here I can even use my spacing gauge. Let me show you. So that'll help us keep us aligned where we were just maybe 2 stitches off on this other one, but I'll adjust for it. So let's go ahead and sew in. Right to the hook. And now I'll just make this touch, and we'll use the spacing gauge to make sure that they kiss and don't overlap. So a little smushing is good here. And what I'll do is I'm going to get to that center position right there so that they kiss, and now I'm going to adjust this to kind of correct my little wonk in there. All right, and then we'll put the hook in there, and we'll come right back to the center right there. So with this, what we've done is we've actually made the spacing quite a bit bigger, a lot bigger. The template that we used was this one, and we used the deeper side, and you can see that the spacing is 2 inches. Well, how did we get this really big giant spacing? From here to there is 2 inches, right? And that's this 2 right here. And then this is also 2. So the opening here is 4 inches now. So the tops are touching. It's top to top and top to top. And that's how you can think about it visually whenever you're lining it up. So whatever the dimension is here, you're going to get double. So if I had used this side, I would have a 3-inch width. So if I had a border that was 3 inches and I wanted to fill it, or 3.5 inches, I could use this dimension and get a wider design out of this than I can if I just use the basic markings. So you get a lot more value if you understand the math of it. So one of the things that I think is really cool with this hourglass, I love this shape, and I'm going to show you something else that we can do that looks cool. Okay, so we started right there. So we still have to line it up the same. Remember that the base of the other side is exactly the same. So if I line my mountain right there, get it lined up, and let's see, I'm right in the center. All right, and I think this one is going to be a little shallower just because it is shallower, so that's how I lined it up. I lined that up with the 1/4 inch. And then, let's see, top to top right there, a 1/4 inch away. So I think I need one more stitch on this little guy because he's not quite going to let me get down to the 1/4 inch. That was the one that we did a little wonky. All right, so we'll get right into this center. And that's where I'm going to make my adjustment so that I can get my other side squared up right there. Right into the hook, and then again lining it up so that you're that 1/4 inch away right there. All right, so let me show you. It's looking pretty awesome. Doesn't that look so cool? I love it. So the concept of using those different sizes right there are really, really valuable. So let's see, I think they're 2 inches. What was the question? Before you start, how? Okay, yeah, so I think the question this time that I'm seeing is how deep right here. It's all going to be based on this number, right? If I'm doing this as a single layer, this is 2 inches, right? With this template, this is the 4 inch that we did here, and the width of the 2 outer arcs right there is 2 inches wide. So if I use this 2, I can fit that easily into a 2.5 inch, a 3 inch. If I echo it, I can fit it into basically anything I want, right? But I probably don't want to put it right into a 2 Because what if my seam is a little tight in some places? Well, it is going to be 2, and I don't want to crowd that in and have it stitch into my seam out here. So if I have that, I would probably do 1.5 if my border is 2. I like a little breathing room so that I have some flexibility if my seam allowance is off. That's my personal preference. You should make your own decision. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do the other side of this cute little guy because I think he looks just completely awesome. And again, it's the same thing. We're doing the shallower side, right? We did this wide side, that's this part. We're going to do the shallower side, and we're starting top to top. So right on the center line there, you can see that's the 1/4 inch, and it's going to sew in. So right here, I saw that we have a 1/4 inch alignment as we come in. So I'll put that on there, and let's sew this. So this is the one that I think is maybe a little complicated because I've aligned it a few times in the past, and I have trouble explaining it to myself sometimes, but I think it looks really awesome, and I think it would be really fun to fill it in with different free motion designs. Once I'm at the center there, I'm going to line it up, and then I'm going to double check the spacing down here because it was acting up right there. So a 1/4 inch right there and a 1/4 inch down here. Perfect. And that's going to give us that really cute little sort of an onion top look, and it creates a lot of fun texture. And we can even do it if we have more than one back-to-back with the same base. We can do more. So let me show you. We won't do another one, but I'm just going to show you it. So right here, this is a different size. This is the back-to-back number 3. So this one is 2.5. So he is deeper. So it's the same exact base size. It's 3 inches. So the portion of this, it's the same, but it'll be deeper. It'll be wider out here, almost 5 if we double it, right? It'll be 2.5 from the center out and 2.5. So that would make this even wider. It would go on the outside of this. If we wanted something shallower, we can do another one with this one, and then we would get mountain to mountain. We would get this little shorty right there in the middle, and he would be a line inside of this, but the same base size. So having the different ones gives you so many choices as far as doing swags or staggering because the base is the same. It's the height that changes. So if I have 2 back-to-backs with the same base size, I'm going to have 4 different depths. And the set 3, this particular one has actually 3 different back-to-backs. So you're going to get 6 different depths with these tools, which I love. Okay, so anyway, let's tack this off and let's move on to some really cool ideas. And I'm going to cut my threads, and I'm going to kind of see if we've gotten some additional questions. Yeah, so the back-to-back is really, really flexible and really fun. It can do so many different things. You see a Christmas decoration? Yeah, I totally can see that, like the little icicle dropping down. I think that would look so cool. And you could even make this like a little longer, make like a little straight line coming down. That would be awesome. I would love it. Okay, so the next one I want to show you is a different kind of an idea, and I've got 2 spaces, and we'll do it one way over here, and we'll change it up with a variation over here. The one thing that I wanted to explain and why I have 2 different size boxes is we just said that different templates are different lengths, right? If I have a really big box and I want to go from the center to the outside, maybe a shorter template is not going to do that for us, right? This is not going to get me to the outside in one pass. I could stack it and keep doing more, but what I like to do is sew out and back on the same line. That way the stitching is really, really clean. So if I want to do that, it's advantageous to have something very long so that I can sew out and back in. So what I thought I would do is we'll do this one way with a straight flourish, and then we'll do the other one with the ribbon Flourish. So, okay, so let's pick a different size since we can. This one is the 1.5, and notice that it has 2 and 2. So this interior size is 6 because you get, 1.5 and 1.5, 1.5, 1.5. So it's actually 6 inches in this interior position, okay? All right, so I don't have to start in the center, but let's go ahead and just make a little dot so we know where our center is. So we'll vary it up on this one, and then on the big one, we'll start in the center just for variety. The one thing about offsetting the center for this design is that it creates a little bit of change where it's maybe a little more of the curve on one side and a little less on the back. And I like that because it offers a little dimensionality. It makes it look like it has more dimension. So this side is the 1-inch side, and this side is 1/2 inch, I think, on this other side. Let's see. I can't see the numbers, they're covered up. So should I use the big side or the little side? What do you think? You guys can pick. I'll give you like 10 seconds. Put your choice. This is side A, taller, and side B, shallower. So pick a side. Are you guys out there? Jan, what do you think? What side do you want me to pick? Little. Okay, Jamie, you got it. You were the first response I saw. So you're going to pick the shallow side. Okay, so just hook it around there. And what I can do here is I'm going to go that way, like away from the template. And then when we do the other side, we'll go the other way. So we'll show you both ways to do it. Make sure your foot's down. I'm just going to follow the template out to the boundary, touch, and I'm going to stitch right back in. Okay? And I don't care if I'm off a little bit. I think it adds to this particular design. Nobody's going to know and nobody's going to say anything. So the first space that I want is a 1/2 inch difference in space, right, out here. So right at the beginning, it's kind of going to be close to the same. And then let's see, then we'll make a bigger space as we go. So right out here at the very edge, it'll be that 1/4 inch because the 1/2 inch, the foot is taking up a 1/4 of it, right? So when we sew back in, we'll get right to the same position. Okay, now I'm going to make a bigger space this time. And because I'm on the corner, I'm just going to kind of, wherever it hits the ruler, that's kind of what I'm going to use. And it'll all work out as we go around. So keep sewing until you reach the boundary, and then come back in. And if I need to kind of get back to the center, I will. And then again, we want that 1/2 inch space right there so that we can get that little change. What we're doing is we're creating a little pattern for ourselves. And you can make this pattern whatever you want. If you want to make it 2 inches, make it bigger, that's okay. You should totally do that. All right? So let me see. I got to get my spacing gauge untethered because he's not moving very well. I'm unhooking him. And I'm going to kind of get this a little bit out of my way, a little bunchied right there. Okay, so let's keep going. So now we want this 1 inch space. So I'm kind of out at the boundary. Touch the boundary, sew back in, and you'll get a lot of extra fullness right where the needle position is, and I'm totally fine with that. I don't care. There's a lot of excess thread on this particular design, and I like it. I think it looks cool. So again, 1 inch right there, so that our edges is where the spacing is going to be. So on this, these curves are matching. They're kind of flowing one into the other, right? So there's not going to be, it's a nice flow. It kind of has that like gently wavy kind of a look to it. And I like that. I think it looks cool. 1/2 inch. So that's one of the keys to making this particular design work, is making sure you're keeping your pattern. Okay, that'll help keep the design looking its best. And you don't have to rotate your sandwich. I'm gonna, as always, rotate mine a little bit just so that we can help you have the best view. Because if I'm sewing behind the machine, you can't see anything, right? So I'm checking my pattern. I'm doing the larger spacing here. And then we'll do the half right there. I need to sew faster, right? Come on, let's get this sewn so we can show you. All right, and again, there's my half, kind of using the outer boundary because it's going to change right here because this angles away, but I'm okay with that. I'm just going to let it do what it can do. It'll all work out. This isn't all about super ultimate precision because the curves are changing. There's a lot of flexibility in this design to get what you want to get. As long as we have a narrower spacing out on the edge, visually your eye is still going to perceive that you've kept the pattern the same. So doesn't that look so cool? I love this design. It's one of my favorites. It's so pretty. And then if you did the spacing even wider, you could put different fills in this part right here, which would just be so fun because it looks amazing. So here, we'll do one last one, and then, we won't take forever because we have other stuff we want to show you, but I'll do one more. So wide, right there, kind of right on the boundary there, at least that 1 inch. And I think by showing you at least half of this, you'll really get a chance to see how the offset makes a big difference to the dimensionality of it, how it changes its spacing. And that's one of the reasons I like to do this one. Oh my goodness, what happened? I hope my bobbin's not empty. But it might be. I don't know. We'll have to see. Nope, it isn't. I didn't think it could be, but I think it came out. Oh, well, that happens. It happens to all of us. Kind of looks like he came out of his track. Yeah, he did. So I'm holding my bobbin to keep it from rotating. That way I can make sure I have pressure when I clip this in. And then I'm going to cut this thread because if I don't, he'll stick to my glider and then I won't be able to get him up. Okay, so I like to just roll this gently, pull this thread out of there so he doesn't get trapped. Smush everybody down, make sure that my glider is nice and sticking well. Now, let's see, where were we? Let's cut some threads. We can cut some threads right here. It is not tacked off, so I'll show you what I'm going to do to make sure he's secured. I'll go ahead and I'm just going to put my needle right back there. Try to get him maybe about 3 stitches behind where we left off, where it was no longer tacked. That bobbin thread is always such a pain. All right, let's get it up. I think I got it now. It's tagged in, so he can't go anywhere. Oh, what happened? Where did that little guy come from? Slippery little sucker. Okay, so we'll cut this bobbin thread so we can get him up. All right, and then we can pull him up to the top. So maybe about right there. I like to check my needle position, maybe manually position my needle so that I know it's right in the stitch line. So right now I'm trying to pull this up and he doesn't want to go. Has that ever happened to you? So what happens a lot of times when this will not lift, sometimes it's because I haven't rotated the hand wheel enough to release the thread. So all I did is I rotated my flywheel slightly forward, just a tiny bit, and then it released this. This thread can get hooked on the bobbin, and if it hasn't completed the cycle, it may not lift. So that's a way that you can just try that. That's the simplest solution. And then if other things, if it doesn't work, then try something else. So here, I want to tack this in. I'm just going to put a few tacking stitches. And if I feel comfortable, I'll actually just tack back to the center. If you don't feel comfortable, you can put that ruler back on there and line it up with your spacing gauge. And then you're reset and you're ready to sew. All right, so there you go. Looks like lava, don't you think? And then I could put like a sky up here or something like that. Let's get you in a little closer so you can see more. All righty, love it. It looks awesome. Okay, we'll just do this last one because he needs his little partner. One of the key things about this is having your foot in the hook so that you can spin around the hook. I don't recommend starting like that. Okay, I recommend starting with your foot in the hook. You can do other things. There's no rule about it, but I think sometimes, like if I started right here, it can be a little bit harder to get things lined up. But sometimes if you're doing this like in a triangle, you may end up with this curve kind of outside of the triangle initially. So you may only be able to sew a little bit and have to travel in your seam to get those first couple of lines. So Lorna, this particular size, this is the 1.5-1, back to back 1.5-1 for this one. So it's 6 inches from this intersection to this intersection, and you're going to get 2 of your S curves within this ruler. So you don't have to reposition each time for each S curve. You actually get 2 of them in this, but it's only 6 inches. Okay, so I'm at the hook. And we need our 1/2 inch space, and then this will be our last one. We'll just move on because I want to show you the other one. It has some different choices that you can make, and it's a little bit of a variation. So I can always come back to this. If I need to finish it later, I'll just tack it right here in the middle, and that way it's secured. But if I want to come back, I can also just start right there in the center when I come back because there's a lot of stitching in there already, and nobody will ever know. That little bobbin, he does not want to come up today. He's really ornery. There we go. Okay. So let's cut those threads. No loosey-goosey threads hanging out everywhere. I don't like to get trapped, and that happens to me. Okay, so this one is done with the 1.5. And when we do this one over here, we're going to do this with the 4, back-to-back 4. And you'll see that that's going to make such a big difference because the curve is stretched a lot. So a lot of what I'm trying to share in today's lesson is the scale of these tools and thinking about how you would use them in terms of the blocks that you're sewing at home. So if you have really large blocks, you probably want the larger size because that's going to give you more flexibility. And we'll start basically in the center with this. So let me get that for you. All right, and we're going to use this same one that we used before, and we're going to actually use both sides, and I'm going to show you how we do that. All right, we'll just kind of guess where the center is. I don't have it marked, but I'll just kind of put it approximately in the center. Right to there. Oh, good enough. Right, good enough for us. Because we're awesome. So this would be how you could do it if you don't want to stitch back on the same line. So this is very similar to how you might use the 6-inch spiral from the sampler set as you're going around, but you're going to have to determine your own spacing. You could even use your crosshair square and make markings at different spaces and use that. So in fact, I'll just go ahead and I'll say, okay, we'll split this and we'll split it and we'll split it. And then we'll just do the same on the other side. So we'll kind of split it in the middle and here and here. And this corner, we'll count that as a space, right? That way you can see kind of what we're lining up as we go. And on this one, we'll use this side of the curve, which is the 2-inch side. We'll do the 2-inch first. And remember that I said that because that's going to make a little bit of a difference. So we're going to sew right into the corner where our little mark is. Then I'm going to sew on the boundary just a few stitches until my foot is touching right there. Okay, now we're going to change the spacing, right? We sewed it this way. So I still want this same type of a curve, but I want to flip it over this way, right? So it's shallower now, but I'm going to line this part right here, right there, up with the same intersection. So my two lines should get me right back to that center. And now we'll have a different spacing. And we should be able to get right back to our center position. So let me show you what that looks like now. So because we have that difference in depth, it's going to give us a little bit of a different spacing right there when we sew back in. Now, we're going to have little pieces like this all around the outside. If we do it that way, we're going to sew in the boundary, so we will have a little outer stitching on that area. So we use the wide side when we did this one first, and let me flip it. We did it. Oh, I guess that's right. So we want to end right on there. I can tell I flipped it over somehow. I think this little guy is always trouble for me. He makes me have difficulty. Nope, I think I'm just going to go with what I can. I know that I want this curve to touch my new line. So it doesn't matter how he's positioned as long as this is a 1/4 inch away. So if I need to, I can just put my spacing gauge right there. So I'm kind of doing it backwards. I know we had it the other way, but that's okay. It'll still work out. So I'm going to use that same curve and get right to that outer border. And then remember what we did. We just moved over until our needle, our foot was touching that line. And we want to keep the same curve when we go back in. So I'm just going to adjust it. I want this one like this, but the shallower side. So let's flip it over. It's the shallower side. And I'm going to line up right down here. Let me see if we can get you way out here so you can see this part. So I can line these two intersections, this line and this line, right up on the center. You can even use your spacing gauge if you feel like you want that. That'll help you get it lined right up exactly so that you can come in. And that's going to give you that little bit of a ribbon look as you come back in. So what I'm going to try to do all the way around is we'll have the wider one on the outside. So, and it's going to have this kind of like, almost like a leafy look, a little bit like a viney look, right? So now we want this wider one. And we'll align it with the spacing gauge right there. The foot is in the hook and we're a 1/4 inch away. Ooh, it isn't. There we go. So wider one on this side, right into our intersection right there. And then just a few stitches in the boundary until the foot touches that point right there, maybe one more. And then I can flip it over so that the narrower one, the blue side, is going to come right into the center. So each time I'm flipping it over to get whatever I need, and I can stretch the curve as I need to get it to fit whatever I need. Because those two have that different depth, it makes it really easy to get sort of like a little bit of a ribbony style in there because they're already different spacing. So doesn't that look cool? And as we go around on the diagonals, you're going to get a little bit more because this is a little longer than this. So as we come right out to the diagonals, so right in this space, these curves are going to be a little elongated. And then right here, they'll be a little shorter where you don't get as much of it. But you can see that that would be really great to be able to get pretty far out with this longer template and have a lot of flexibility of how you are echoing those curves. You can always move the ruler over so that he can echo at a different space too. So here, and then we'll just move over one, and we'll flip it over so we can come back in. I want to just do the corner so you can see the look of how it's going to go around the corner because it does change just a little bit there at the corner. Right back to the center. And then here I can just flip this over. And if I was behind me, I could just use my spacing gauge and get right into the corner. Okay? Denise, I like your idea. I think it would look cool as template. So see how now the curve is kind of stretched, and we do want to extend it a little bit. So it's going to be tight right here because there's not that much room for it. It changes the curve. So I think we'll come out just a little bit just to kind of give it a little space right here. And then we'll just move up a tiny bit. So fudging is good. You should feel like you could always do that. You're the one in charge of the design. So you don't have to, let anybody else tell you how it needs to be. All right, and this will be the last one we'll do on this little ribbon adventure. Now, another option here is I don't have to use the different sides. I can use the same side, and then this will just echo back in. You can sew out and across, and you can just echo back in, and the curve will be identical. So many different options for you. You don't have to do exactly what I'm doing. You can just do whatever you feel is good and what looks good to you. All right, so now I want to show you just some important information if you want to be able to use these, not necessarily for a border, but just use the actual difference curves for different things. So that's where we're going to go next. And I've created some different space just to show you how that can look. So let's flip it this way. So I have just 2 boxes for the 4. And I want to show you just a couple of things. Where did it go? There we go. It's hiding way back there. All right, so on this one right here, I'm going to sew around. So this is the circle, and it's pretty big, you can see. Let's put some grips on there before we start going. Whenever I'm putting grips on this, the stable tape grips, I like to have them inside the circle, right? They need to be all the way up near the top. So there's all this space right here for us, and we can just put that in there. This one's pretty big. I'll probably put 2. I'll put one on this side and one on the other side. And I usually match them up on the other side, kind of, just so that I'm not covering up twice as much. Like I try to put the other piece right on there. That way I'm not having, twice as much messy grip covering everything. I do like the center line to be visible, but most of the time I'm not too worried about if these cover up a line. People ask me that all the time. I can extrapolate visually that the line is still lined up, and usually it works out just fine. So here I would put maybe 1 or 2 right in the center, 1 on each side, and then the same thing over here. This is kind of skinny. I might need one there. We'll see. Usually I'll try to get away with just a few if I don't need so many, because these are on both sides. Then I would have to use quite a bit more, if I'm putting 1 million on there. So we'll just kind of set it up like this, and then I'll put doubles over here. And that it will usually be enough for me to have this not move around. Remember with this template that we're going to basically sew half at a time. So we don't need to hold the whole template. We might need one down here though. This is kind of we'll see. We'll see what happens. All right, let's get these out of here. Right now, when we do this, we're not going to sew all of the box. We're just going to sew with just this circle, and we'll sew around this one block right here. So you could see when we line it up right on that center position that we should be able to perfectly sew this in a 4-inch box, right? And I could use it for a smaller box, and I'll show you that in a minute, but then you just don't have as good of lines to line things up, but you could still do it. This line right here is going to line right up there, and we'll just sew it. So I'm going to adjust my hand position here so I can get into this corner. And I want to turn it so you can see as we're lining it up. if this is the edge right here, it is possible for me to line it up this way, like this, right? And that would mean that now I can use this reference and I can use this one. Out here would be off of the quilt, and that would be kind of difficult, I think, to get it to align and make sure that these grips are not, getting caught on different things. So this might be pretty useful. So right there. And then again, I can use either side. I can use this side and get this lined right up. So I think my line is a tiny bit bigger than it should be because it's not smushing as easily. But here, I can sew right into this intersection. Get your fingers up inside of the circle. That's really what you want to hold. We're not worrying about what's happening on the other side of the template. We're really just trying to get right here. Okay, notice how much this is cutting into this space. I think this design looks amazing, but he is really going to be in charge of this block. He's taking up all of this. So this is a great fill for a solid fabric if your block just needs the quilting to be the detail. But I don't know if I would put this in something really busy because you're not going to see the quilting detail unless you didn't care. That's totally up to you, right? So I'll just go to this end, and this is where it would tack off. And there is ways to make this continuous. Maybe we'll show you that on a different one. But I just want to show you the scale really quickly about this. So let's go ahead and cut this, and then we'll talk about what we can decide if we don't like this, but we want a 4-inch whatever. Okay? With this is the circle. It's a half circle, so you can see it's very, very tall. It's 4 inches deep from the bottom of the curve to the top. And it really takes this whole block and makes it fill up everything, right? If you want to fill up with the shallower side, let me just draw one little line to express why we can make such a big difference. Let me get my little ruler out. Anytime that your curve goes beyond the 45-degree miter right here, see how this part crosses the miter right there? That means that you're going to have an overlap. If my curve doesn't cross the miter right there, and he just comes in like that, then you're not going to get any overlap. So this is what I mean by overlap. This is where these arcs are crossing over each other. If you don't like that, you need a shallower arc that is not going to cross this 45-degree miter line. So let's find one. Let's put the miter in right here. You can determine if you're going to have any overlap before you ever sew anything. If I lay this on here, right on this intersection and this intersection, a 1/4 inch away right there, I know that this side is not going to cause any overlap. Now this one's pretty shallow. I'm kind of asking myself, is that even really worth it? Because he's not getting very much. Let's try our little medium one right here and let's see how we do. We'll line him up. And he is right at a 1/4 inch. So I think that this particular size is going to sew perfectly without overlapping, and they'll meet at the corner. So let's go ahead and test my theory so we can show you the different options. And that's how you can test it for every single size, right? It doesn't matter if it's 4 inches or 1/2 inch or 3 inches or whatever. Any one of these back-to-back templates, you can lay it on the different size squares that you have. And as long as the curve is less than that miter when it sews with your 1/4 inch allowance, then you should be totally fine without any overlap. Different depths are going to fill in the curve more or less depending on, where they fit. So right here, let's just do some tacking at the beginning. He is just right inside that miter. So he hits basically the line right at the 45. So let's come in just a little closer. Let's get you in a little bit more. Oh, sometimes this camera is very, very tricky. All right. Hi, you guys haven't left me yet. Are you bored? I hope not. Honey's not here to answer all the questions, so I'm having to do it myself today. I'm having to scroll. Thank you. I'm glad that you're having fun. I hope you appreciate that. Let's see. Nancy Ferguson said, what? Any stitch in the ditch, you're stitching on top of the thread. Okay, somebody said, should the seams be pressed open instead of to the side? I do not like my seams to be pressed open. That is a personal preference. That is not a rule. You should do what you want to do, and I'm not telling you what to do. I like, if I'm ditching, I want to be on the valley side. If I'm on the mountain side, let me see if I can show you what that means. See if I have a little scrap. Let me grab something real quick. Oh, darn it. I don't have any convenient examples. Oh, yes, here we go. Found one. Okay. All right. Oh, this even has ditching. Perfect. I'm going to just pull this up for you. See that right there? This is the low side, the white or the creamy color, and this batik is the mountain. So valley and mountain. When I'm ditching, I like to sew right in the valley side, right? Actually stitching on the white. Look at how well that hides when you're right in that ditch. Even though she's using a yellow thread, a very bright kind of goldy thread, it hides really, really well. If I stitch up here on the mountain side, I'm going through the top layer, 2 layers of the seam, the batting, and the backing. Right away, as soon as I start sewing, I can hear thunk, 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 and that's a sign to me that I'm on the wrong side. And I can hear that, and it's much more difficult to control. The needle doesn't go in as smoothly because of all of those layers. So I always like to have the seams pressed to the one side and ditch in the valley if I can. I think that sometimes when you're doing more complicated quilts, sometimes all bets are off and you just do the best you can. So I wouldn't get yourself too worked up about that. But what happens if your seams are thick, you can use a seam mallet or make sure that you're really, really pressing them really well. And if your fabric is just really thick and you just need to make a seam go this way or that way, you should just do it. You shouldn't feel like you have any difficulty making those decisions. That's totally up to you. Seam nesting is very helpful because it does make the quilt lay flatter. So I try to do that whenever I can. But also don't be a slave to it. As long as the quilt is quilted well and it's not going to fall apart and your user is going to be happy, that's what's most important. So really, your perfection quotient needs to not be something that inhibits you from getting the quilt done and getting it to somebody who's going to love it. So, okay, that's kind of off topic, I guess, but anyway, hopefully that was helpful to somebody. Okay, I've scrolled down a little bit and let's go ahead. Let's see what we're going to do here. So we've got just one of these, right? And you can see how distinctly shallow that it is right there. You can see that's a lot shallower. So let's go ahead. We'll do all of the sides and we'll get us back up to the top. With this template, I will tell you that, it has I call it the directional challenge because, sometimes I'm like this and is that the right side? Oh, sometimes, wait, I need that side. So the key is remembering if you're on the deeper side or the shallower side, and then think about which way you want the curve to go. That's why these arrows are really powerful because you want to stay on the same color on either side, but then make whatever curve is easier for you to line up. There's no rule about that. You should position it however you need to get what you want. So for example, just like we said on the last one, if we're going to line it up right here, This is probably better because we're right near the edge, but I can do it this way, right? If all these grips are not, hanging up, I can certainly do it on this side. There's nothing to prevent me. It's going to give me the exact same relationship. It's just that a lot of the ruler here is hanging off, right? So you have the freedom to make whatever choice, and then you can see that I want the pink side. I'm going to have to go like this, right? Or wait, did we say the narrower side? I think we did. Oh, there, see? I'm getting myself in trouble. So I'm right here on the miter, and I'm lined up here right on the edge. That's going to help me make sure that this is that 1/4 inch, but I can also check it with my spacing gauge if I need to. So let's get positioned with my ruler right where I need it. A little stretch, and make sure I have my 1/4 inch on this side. Right to the corner, and then maybe now is going to be easier for me to use this because I think we're using the shallow side on this one. So right here, checking my 1/4 inch with my spacing gauge. If it's not obvious, it should be right on this line. Again, let me tip the camera so you can see the line. So you can see that we have this line right there. That should be right on this line because that is the alignment of where the foot's going to stop sewing. So if we need to smush, we can. And then remember that you want the 2 edges to be flush, right? So even though this is tipped a little bit, the 2 edges of the spacing gauge and the template are flat. They're not like canted like that where this flat edge is not touching the ruler flat. So that's how we would measure that to get us right into the center. Okay, and then let's just do the last one. And then I want to stay right here because I want to show you something cool that we're going to do after that. So this is the shallower part, and we're going to make him match right to his corner so that the needle ends right at the end of the square. Okay, so now let's show you something cool. I'm going to tack this off, and I'm going to jump stitch to my next position, okay? Because I need to be able to position the ruler freely, but I don't need to cut this. I can just lift up my needle, and I want to release this pressure so I can move around a little bit. So let me show you. We did this narrow side. We did blue. Now we're going to do pink. It's awesome. Wait till you see this. It looks so cool. Let me get it all lined up for you. We're lining it up the same, right, on the center line, right in all of the correct spaces. And now, right in this little space right there, let me get this thread out of there. In between those 2 intersections right there, but touching the ruler, that's where I kind of want to start my stitching right there. So now I can position my needle right there. And let me get my fabric adjusted. All right, so right here, we can sew the same thing. It's the same depth. Oh, darn it. I think I just trapped myself. I did. Somehow I just pulled that thread. Let's cut it. Bonbon time. Who knows what bonbon time is? So I mess up, just like everybody. It happens to me all the time. I'm not immune. Let's cut all these threads, make sure that we have no threads hanging out, creating problems. Oh yeah, he did not like that. So we'll just cut these because that will really be a big mess. Okay, good. So now these guys are all out of our way. I can rip this later. I mean, he probably will come out because he's not very secure, but I could just put my needle back in to wherever I want and start sewing, and that's my bonbon time. I think that it's important to go ahead and use that bonbon time sometimes because then you're not stuck with, oh my God, I made a mistake, I have to rip everything out. Just reset your needle, tack it off, and go ahead and start stitching. We're going to make one adjustment to the design. Let's make this come in a little bit more so we have a little bit more noticeable look to our design. We're going to start with our needle right in the cross mark, right? Because that's what we want. We're going to come right back to our little miter. And this is going to look so awesome. You're going to love it. So right there, put my needle right in the miter, and I'm going to sew miter to miter at this time. I've got this lined up. It's 1/4 inch away from that center needle reference line. Right? That's going to give us just a little bit more of an echo. And then right here, we'll line it up. And each time, we'll line it up on that same reference line. We're just one line in. And when we stop sewing, we're going to stop with this line right here. Because this one is a little bit deeper, he's going to give us a little freedom to make a pretty interior arc right in here. So let's get lined up right on the reference line. And our needle should be touching. That's the one thing we have to kind of watch out for. So like if this is a little big, we might take one more stitch. Nobody will know, but it'll be easier to get the ruler to line up. So we're going to stitch to the miter this time. We're looking for this 1/4 inch, so maybe one more stitch there. And when we come back to the last one, what matters here is that we close the design. So it doesn't really matter where everything's lined up. I mean, we want it ideally lined up nicely, but we want to stitch back in. So I'm going to line up my ruler so I have a 1/4 inch right there. And I'll use my spacing gauge just to trust but verify that I'm going to come right in to that exact spot. And right here, I can either use a tie-off technique to bury my threads, or I can do some micro tacking. And I love that. I love putting that extra little fill in there with the little arc. And that's one of the fun things that those deeper curves can allow you to do. Because doesn't that look so cool? Here, and I'll just brush this off so you can see how it looks. Let me get a little scrap so we can scrub it. So somebody was asking about ironing off. This is not iron off chalk right here. This is erasable. This is Boheen, and it's a fat chalk pencil. That's this one right here. It's a fat line. If you need a finer line, I like to use Fons & Porter ceramic chalk. That's this one. It's a little finer, so that's a little bit, this one's a little bit more work to get it off, but still great to use it. So you can tell that what depth of arc really makes a big difference to how your designs can come out. And having the back-to-back, even just one, means that you have two different depths right away, right off of the get-go. And so the reason I had made these other boxes is because I was going to show you like the 3, the 2, the 1.5, the 1. I just don't know if we have enough time to show all that. It is 4:30. We don't have any time. All right, well, what did you think? Did you find that was useful information? Do you feel like you could better make a decision about what you want now? So the 3-2, which is a 3-inch curve with 2 different depths at 2 inches and 1.5, that particular template is in the Fun and Fancy collection. So let me grab that and I'll show you. Where did it go? All right, actually, we'll do it this way. I'm going to scoot some of these things off, and we're just going to kind of go really, really super quick through the details. Set number 4 has 2 pieces, okay? So if you purchase set number 4, this is what you're going to get. You're going to get the 4-inch half circle, and you're going to get 3 other depths. The depths are 1/2 inch, 1 inch, and what is that one? 1.5 inch and 2. So 1, 1.5, 2, and 4. There's only 2 pieces in this particular set, so you're going to get 2 templates. Set number 3 is perhaps my favorite, my personal favorite, and it actually has 3 pieces. So this is the back-to-back number 3. It's really shallow and really deep. So this is 2.5. And this one is 1/2, very shallow, great for feathers. And then this one is the half circle and a moderate curve on this side. And this one is 1 inch on that side. And then the other one that we have is the one from the Fun and Fancy, and that's the 3-2. And that one is 2 moderate curves at 2 inches and 1.5 inches. So this is set 3. All 3 of these are in the set. You can always buy each one individually, but many times if you purchase a set, it's like getting a template either half off or maybe getting one free. It depends on how big the set is. Okay, so that's set number 3, which is 3 pieces. Then set 1.5 is these 2. So this is the one that has the circle, the half circle. And this is very shallow, 3/4 inch depth on this narrow one. This one on this side is 1 inch. And then, I don't know, this one, I can't tell. I covered up the lines, darn it. So anyway, but it's out there. It's all on the Sew Steady page. So on this one, the 1.5 is 2 different pieces if you purchase the set. And then set 2, which is a 2-inch curve, of course, has a 2-inch circle, half circle with the S curve. And then you get 3 other depths with this, 1, 2, 3, if you have the set. And then set 1 is only a single template. And this is the back-to-back 1-inch circle. So it's a half circle S curve. And then this one is only ½ inch on this side. And the reason that there's not that many more of these is, can you imagine if you had like a 1-inch base and then you had like a 2-inch depth? It'd be like a triangle. It just wouldn't be a good relationship. So you want a depth that is shallower. And that's why with this particular one, there's only 1. Because then, I mean, you're not really getting much difference in detail if you went to like 1 3/4. It's not very much noticeable depth. So why would you want a template if it doesn't really change anything, right? So that's why there's only 1 in this grouping. So, okay, I'm tired. How about you guys? Is your brain overflowing? All right. Anyway, so I hope that helps you think about what you might want in terms of size. And there's so many great designs. And the reason I'm sharing all of this is I'm working up a class that I'm going to ask Stacy to post within another month or so. I'm not sure exactly when she'll have the availability because they've been super busy lately. But I am going to be offering a class, and you can do it with different templates. It'll list the back-to-back options, but then you can also do it with the mini multi-arc is going to be the predominant. But if you have different shapes, you can do a lot of the same designs in different depths. So that's kind of where this is leading to in the future. So, all right. So I haven't answered as many questions as I would like to because I was talking so much. But what I will do is I'll go back through the feed and I will answer the questions. If you have something that didn't get answered, please go ahead and put a note in there. I do check everything. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. And I just wanted to say one last thing. A lot of people are liking my feathers class and maybe did not have the chance to sign up. If you still want to do it, I asked Stacy to open the class back up, and she did. So you will have the opportunity to view the first class as a recorded video, and then the live is the 24th. So the second part of that class will be live this week. So if you're interested in that, you will be able to view all those videos until the end of April. And I have to say, so many of you that have posted your work, you guys are awesome. I was so impressed. You guys are amazing. So I will tell Honey that he is missed because he is awesome and he is missed. And thank God he's going to feed me because I'm starving. But anyway, if you have any questions about any of the things that I've talked about today, let me know. I'm happy to answer them, and I do try to respond to everybody. So have a wonderful day and happy quilting. Goodbye. Go quilt. Go have fun.